Okay, and welcome back to another show. And this afternoon, we've got a journalist perspective, and we've got Rohan Banjeree on my live channel. And good afternoon to Rohan, and welcome to the show.
Thanks very much for having me, John. Just as we were saying in the preamble, just delighted to have a space in which I can complain about the club without fear of reproach, because complaining doesn't seem to be acceptable these days. We have to accept where we are and ticking along.
Yeah, sure.
So, how do you want to start?
Right. No, what it is, I forgot to click the live button, and he was chatting. I thought, oh, sugar, I forgot to press the live button, so I didn't want to interrupt you because it'd be rude for me to interrupt when he's chatting.
I'll just I'll kind of steam through what you're saying.
No.
You know, I think at the moment the club is very low. I think the fan base is low. I think the overwhelming question that came out of yesterday is, it's another game without a win. Who are we going to beat? And, I can absolutely see that there was an improvement. There was an improvement shifting four at the back. I think there has been an improvement in the last two draws, but feeding into the wider context of it, it is 23 wins in 82 league games. It is 6 league games without a win this season. We're out of the League Cup already. It is not beyond the realms of possibility for us to go into the October international break winless and in the bottom 3. I find it very frustrating, more than very frustrating, that we are told that our concern is unfounded, and that the criticism that we've got is rooted in unrealistic expectations. I don't like the word expectation. Let's use the word hope instead. But what is the baseline hope for any football club is you would like to win more often than you lose, right? Now, that's not going to be possible for every single club. I think, again, every fan would accept that. But you're allowed to hope to win more often than you lose. And the fact is, for us, we haven't won more often than we've lost for a very long time. In fact, we just haven't won very often. And I don't think it's unreasonable for fans to be disappointed with disappointing results. I find it baffling that a manager can have such a poor track record, not just at Newcastle, but at all of his clubs, and still be so vehemently defended by large sections of the press. I don't think yesterday is the best example of Bruce's poor tactics. I think there were a couple of questionable decisions when it comes to substitutions, but I don't think the Watford game is the game with which to use as a rod to strike his back. But the Watford result, which is ultimately what you have to judge a manager on, feeds into a wider problem. And I was just mentioning about the Christmas fixture list. If we have got games against City, Liverpool. We're playing City, Liverpool, and Chelsea, I believe, over the Christmas period. It is very likely that we'll lose all 3 games, and that would be independent of whoever the manager was. In which case, it is extremely important to get points on the board now. Watford is an eminently winnable fixture. Again, I don't go in with any expectation that we should beat them just because we're Newcastle. I think that's an absolute misnomer. But I do think when you're 1-0 up away from home and you have as many chances as we do, as we did yesterday, then you can see that as 2 points dropped. Do I blame Bruce directly for the result more so than Jacob Murphy missing that golden chance? I think that's a moot point. I think if Murphy had scored that, we'd be in a very different mood. I don't think Watford is the best example of the problem. I think Steve Bruce is absolutely a problem and a barrier to progress, but I don't think yesterday was the example that I'd want to use as a case study. But I'm talking about where we are in the league table and where we're getting results, or not, as the case may be. That should be cause for concern. And I don't think fans should be dismissed for airing that concern. And that is really frustrating. And I say that as a journalist, it's extremely frustrating to see supposedly reputable publications trivializing our concerns as if they're unfounded. I think if any other club, and again, I'm not talking about, firstly, the kind of results Bruce has got would not be tolerated at any clubs above us, but even the clubs around us, they would be vindicated in criticising. I think if Sean Dyche went on a run of 2 wins in 22, again, I know that the expectation at Burnley is perhaps, more grounded, and again, that's not to say that we have delusional expectations. I go back to this baseline hope thing. Our hope is simply to win games of football, as is the case for any other team in the league. But for some reason, when we say we like to win games, we're told we're expecting the earth. But I think if Sean Dyche went on that sort of run, he'd have been sacked. If Hassan Hutel went on that kind of run, he'd be sacked. I don't know where the exceptionalism comes from for Newcastle. Is it because the ownership doesn't care? Is it because the ownership is negligent? Perhaps you could say that. But, we know what the situation is with Ashley, but I'm talking about the wider community. I mean, yesterday when I was at Watford, I could hear Watford fans baffled that we were 1-0 up and still chanting Bruce out. They don't understand it. And I think that's part of the problem, is a lot of outsiders don't get that. I think for the vast majority of this fan base, Steve Bruce is beyond the point of return. I think such is his toxic relationship with the fans that it wouldn't matter whether we'd won yesterday or not. I think the large majority of the fans would still wanted him out because of his relationship with us. And that's his own doing. That's his own doing through poor results, through alienating press conferences, snide digs towards the previous manager, his open praise of Charnley and Ashley. Bruce is his own worst enemy. And then on top of that, you could say, okay, it's all bluster, it's all nonsense. I mean, one of my friends who's actually a Darlington fan said, if he winds you up that much, don't listen to him. I said it's hard not to listen to him because of the way we interact with football now. We engage with football in such a way that it's pervasive. Social media, you're not going to be able to avoid his pre-match quotes. You're not going to be able to avoid his post-match quotes. So he's always going to wind you up, but you might be able to tolerate it a bit more if the results were there, but they're not. And they haven't been the whole time he's been there. His record at Newcastle is bad. It's objectively bad. I get so frustrated with people saying, but you finished 12th last season. It papers over the cracks. I think 12th on paper is a respectable league position that I was happy with, of course, but we were one less goal or one result away from finishing 17th. The table is tight. So this season, I think, as it happens, we could finish 12th again, or we could go down. And I think the difference between us going down or having a decent season will ultimately be management. And management means not just tactical ability, but also training methods. We're getting too many injuries. And again, even Bruce himself says we seem to get more than our fair share of it. Well, why don't you question why that is? What are we doing differently? I think I'm also very concerned about the fact that the players don't seem to train every day. Obviously they should have a day off, 2 days off, but I don't think they do 5 days training. Why did Steve Bruce go on holiday in the last international break? All of these, I don't think, are unreasonable questions. And yet, if I dare, or if any Newcastle fan dares to question whether the management could be doing something differently or could be doing something better, we're told to be grateful for what we've got. Well, what have we got? We've got no wins this season, out of the League Cup, and a manager who constantly talks down his players and talks down the club. So I'm struggling to see what I should feel grateful for, really. It baffles me,
Yeah. And also bigging up the opposition as well. I mean, saying that Watford are top club, and he said something else. He said another club that a top club. So I can't remember who it was last season, but he definitely said that. But
we had last look. I think it's fine for a manager to be respectful of opposition, right? I think it's all part of the theatrics, like especially in cup games where you say we have to be alert. We're the bigger side, but they're a good side within the context of their league. I mean, but again, to go back to the exceptionalism afforded to Steve Bruce and Newcastle United, if you look at Newport, right? Newport, I think last season, didn't we laboured to a draw, a 1-1 draw. Shelby scored a screamer and we went through on penalties. And we were told, yeah, but Newport are a good side. So, actually they've given you a tough game and, you should be grateful you've gone through on penalties. And haven't Southampton just battered them 8-0 this season? I don't know. I don't know. Like I mean, words like perhaps I'm more conservative with my vocabulary when it comes to describing achievements in football. I wouldn't be describing 6 games without a win only at the relegation on goal difference. I wouldn't be using words like good, fantastic, great, wonderful. And even so, like this whole narrative around he's a nice bloke doing his best. Well, firstly, if he's a nice bloke or not is irrelevant, isn't it? It's irrelevant. He could be an absolute arsehole, but we could be top of the league. Yeah. I mean, for what it's worth, I don't think Pep is a particularly nice bloke, but he's a good football manager. So like whether or not Steve Bruce is a nice bloke is irrelevant. I find that an absolutely absurd defense of the job that he's doing. And secondly, this idea that he's getting more out of less than he has. He is, even accounting for inflation, he is the most backed Newcastle manager in the history of the club. Like, that is a fact. He spent more money than anyone. Could the squad be improved? Yes, absolutely. And there are deficiencies. Nobody's disputing that. But that is true of the entire bottom half. He's not dealing with more or he's not dealing with more or less than other teams, and other teams are performing better, i.e. they have won games. I refuse to accept, and this is in fairness, this is absolutely my opinion, but I don't think Brighton are much better than us on paper as a squad. No. I don't think that their squad, in the same way that if you took Saint-Maximin and Wilson away from Newcastle, the team would struggle. In the same way, if you took, they've lost Ben White. I was going to say he was one of the better players last season. But if you took Basuma away, for argument's sake, they would have a glaring deficiency in midfield, right? Managers would just cope with it. And, I don't think Steve Bruce can play the poverty card and be like, oh, I've got such terrible players. You've got a good enough team to finish higher than you did last season, or at least try to. I don't believe that this squad is doomed and is. In fact, I actually rate a lot of the players very highly. I think more could be got out of what he has. So, yes, absolutely, we should have had a backup striker. Absolutely, and probably another centre back. And I think that's a fair complaint from Steve Bruce. I think it's a fair complaint from the fan base. But I refuse to accept that this squad would be relegated were it not for Steve Bruce. Right? I don't think we owe him that debt of gratitude for keeping what is a Premier League squad in the Premier League. I think it's an overblown. It's absolutely an overblown achievement, if you can call it that. That run of 22 games where we only won 2 last season. People say like, oh, well, Saint-Maximin and Wilson were injured for most of it. They played half of those games. So, they played like it's amazing how narratives get twisted to defend Steve Bruce. And like I say, I stand by my initial comment. If he was doing the exact same job at any other club, fans of that club would be annoyed. I am constantly astounded at how many fans of other clubs will tell us that he's doing a good job and we should be grateful for him. And yet I've not seen a fan of any other club say, I want Steve Bruce to be our manager. Except one ridiculous Arsenal fan, actually. One Arsenal fan on Twitter who said that Arteta was the worst manager ever, despite the fact that Arsenal have won a trophy in the last 3 seasons and the lowest they've finished since the 90s is 8th. So I find, my tiny violin is on standby, but I find that interesting. I really do find it an interesting quirk of fan culture, social media that, I mean, actually, I saw one Newcastle fan put a very funny request a bet saying that I want odds on Newcastle to go down, but Steve Bruce to win Manager of the Season. That's the kind of topsy turvy world we're living in. I resent the implication that it's personal. It's absolutely not. I actually had a chat with a Newcastle fan who was a bit more sympathetic towards Steve Bruce. He agreed that a change in manager would be. Would be good, but he was sympathetic, and I don't think it is personal. I've got nothing against him as a bloke. I'm frustrated that I feel that he's one of the biggest barriers to progress, and yet he remains. I've seen some questions coming through. Peter has asked who I would like to replace him. I guess I would caveat by saying realistically or not. I mean, I think realistically and sensibly, I do think Eddie Howe is a ready-made and suitable replacement. He's out of work. I think he's itching to get back in the game. I know a lot of people will say good managers don't want to work under Ashley. It's a poison chalice. That as maybe, but there are only a finite amount of Premier League jobs. If you want a Premier League job and one becomes available, Newcastle's still an attractive prospect. And also, whether rightly or wrongly, a lot of managers will want that job purely because they want to be the person who gets it right, because the person who gets it right will be hero worshipped. So I don't dispute that Ashley is a difficult sell and a difficult person to work under. Absolutely, abhorrent bloke. But I still think that in pure footballing terms, Newcastle is still a project that a lot of people would be excited by. So I think realistically, Eddie Howe, and I think the bookies' odds kind of reflect that that's probably the way the club's thinking as well. I would go for Eddie Howe. If I could have anyone and we could go a bit more left field, then I would want Andre Villas-Boas. That would be my pick, but that's my personal opinion. It's not rooted in any theory or inside information. I think he'd be a very good fit for us and our players. And I think that with the Bobby Robson connection as well, there would be something there. But in terms of connectivity, though, I do think Eddie Howe would have that in that he knows several of the players already. I think that would be a sensible choice. He's worked with them before. I think that if we played 4-2-3-1 or 4-3-3, I think we would get a lot better out of Almiron, for example. I don't know why this season Ryan Fraser has played. When he has played, these cameo appearances have largely been from centre mid. I don't think Almiron is a centre mid. I don't think he's a winger. And those are the two positions he's played. He's never really played in that number 10 role. Sam Maximan, as admirably as he has performed, and I think his stats are very good this year, even though we've not been winning. He's got 3 assists and 2 goals in 6 games, and he's played all 90 minutes. But he's playing he's effectively playing as a striker. But I want him out wide. Hassling fullbacks and pinging crosses in. Yeah. He's doing very well in this role. He could do even better if he was played as an actual winger, which is what he was signed for. I think we would see those positive attack-minded changes under a coach like Eddie Howe. But to be honest with you, I'm quite open-minded. I'm convinced that 4-2-3-1 or 4-3-3 would suit these players better. I'm convinced that players like Jamal Lewis can be integrated back into the squad. Matt Ritchie, I've got a lot of time for as a servant to the club. But again, he's not a left-back. But he's suddenly become our first choice left back. I don't know how that's happened. So whether Bruce is replaced or not that's conjecture. I don't think. I mean, I know a lot of people will say, "Oh, Ashley will never sack him," which and I completely understand why people do feel defeatist. But I think there has been a shift in the mood at the club. I think that statement that came out from the club reminding us of how much has been spent. And, again, don't get me wrong, I think we should have spent more. I think we should have bought new players. I do think Bruce has legitimate complaints in saying I probably wanted 2 or 3 more through the door, particularly loans. I think that's an absolutely fair comment. But I also think that the club is within its rights to point out to him, you actually have had a lot of players in the last few windows, and players that he's chosen and not used effectively. Jeff Hendrick, I know it's a free transfer, but he's a waste of a squad space now. He's not playing, and when he has played, he's been poor. That's completely a Steve Bruce signing. He's got it wrong, and now we're lumbered with a player that we don't use. Ryan Fraser, free transfer. I thought it was quite a coup, to be honest. The bloke never plays. And now he is playing. His cameos are in centre mid. He's not centre mid. So Jamal Lewis, who Liverpool wanted, £15 million signing, actually good money, quite a bargain for the player that he could develop into. Doesn't play. He's now being kept out of the side. He's meant to be a young left back that we were developing, and there's a sell-on clause that the idea was that we'd buy him, and then 3 years down the line we'd sell him for 50 or 60. This lad is not going to go for 50 or 60. He's not even playing. What was the point?
It's stupid, absolutely stupid. I mean, when I first got the guy, I thought he'd be a young player for the future. Yeah, but Jamal Lewis is a damn good player. He's an attacking left back. Yeah, Ritchie, you just said there, is not a fullback. He is a winger for me. But I'll play Lewis at left back.
I think one thing I will say for Matt Ritchie, I do think Matt Ritchie is still one of the better crossers at the club. So I can understand that, but if we are going to switch, if we are hopefully going to switch from, if we're going to switch from a back 5 to a back 4, then Matt Ritchie is not your left back in that case. I've seen Matthew Smith said it has got personal because of Bruce's comments towards the fans. Yeah, I guess so. I guess so. I think that is a fair comment. I think Steve Bruce says things in press conferences that don't need to be said, and they rile up fans. And like, his poor relationship with the fans is his fault. Nobody has told him what to say in press conferences. He chooses his words badly, and then wonders why people don't like him. You know, that's it. It's his fault. So yesterday at the Watford game, when Watford fans couldn't understand why the fans were saying we want Bruce out, even when we were 1-0 up, I know to an outsider that must seem strange, but that's because they don't listen to his press conferences. They don't listen to him saying, hopefully we can beat Oxford. You know, they don't see the digs at Rafa saying like, oh, we match the points under. Like, he still hasn't, £160 million later, he still hasn't finished above 10th, which is what Rafa got with Hoslu and Gale up front. And I think, if nothing else, you know, I always wonder, how is it that a bloke who wasn't from Newcastle, a bloke who was from Spain, managed to connect and engage with the city and go? And I appreciate COVID happened, but I almost feel like Steve Bruce, he doesn't feel proud to be manager of the club. You know, only 2 weeks ago, he said, do you not think I would like better players? If I'm a player in that dressing room and I'm hearing that, that's not what I want to be motivated with. You know, like that for me, that doesn't send confidence down. You know, I also think that, like, it's a really weird, a weird characteristic of selection. That a lot. I mean, Joelinton is going to be a player that divides opinion, but I don't think his selections are ever made. I mean, there was the Andy Carroll incident at the start of was it last season, that Andy Carroll had a good game against West Ham, and then Bruce said, well, I have to start him against Brighton. That's baffling logic to me. You pick the 11 players that are going to beat the team or give you the best chance of beating it. You know, I don't understand how certain selections happen. I think players get hung out to dry very easily under Bruce. Freddie Woodman, for example, scapegoated this season. You know, and I thought that was unfair on him. As for, you know, there's just no, I mean, Fabian Schär, I don't know what's happened there as well. I don't know how Kieran Clark is starting every game and Fabian Schär sitting on the bench. You know, I cannot see the reasoning behind it. And again, but I feel like I'm entitled to have that opinion and say, look, the results are rubbish and I'm questioning these decisions. But the moment that you do question those decisions, you get told not to.
It's ridiculous. It's a joke. It is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, it's just to answer the questions, but you're talking about Steve Bruce there. I mean, he's just making a rough on his own back here, sort of thing. I mean, the sooner you get this guy out of the club, the better, because he's not going to make this year. He's not going to make this year. He's not going to make Christmas as things stand.
But this is the thing. I'm actually confused as to whether, like, I don't know how or when it can happen, because I know that it needs to. I think that, you know, it's just got to a point of no return, whether it's relationship, whether it's results, whatever. It's like, look, the season that Rafa went 10 games without a win. And I hasten to add, as much as I wanted Benitez to stay, and I absolutely loved the job that he did and the relationship he had with the fan, I wasn't uncritical of Rafa. I think when Rafa deserved criticism, I would have given it. You know, I got frustrated in that 10 games without a win because Rafa was loyal to 5 at the back for a long time. But we had a different team then. We had different players that, you know, that's like I do. And also we did switch in the end to a front 3 of Rondon, Perez and Almiron. But I didn't think that he was above criticism. And I would have criticised him for poor decisions and all that, but then I would have accepted there is a certain managerial pedigree. There's a precedent that he will turn things round. You know, Rafa Benitez teams famously start slow and end strongly. What does Steve Bruce teams famously do? Fail to get promoted with Villa, get relegated with Hull, lose a cup final. His greatest achievement is losing a cup final. Relegated with Birmingham City. Mid-table in the Championship with Sheffield Wednesday, and we paid legal tender to go and get him. That sums up where we were in terms of the level of ambition. But I mean, I actually got asked, the lad who was sympathetic to Bruce, again, not like, isn't agreed that the results weren't good enough, but sympathetic to his situation. He said to me, the fact that Bruce was 12th choice or 10th choice or whatever it was proves that nobody wants the thing. My counterpoint to that would be that was then, this is now. I do think that the squad that Bruce inherited, well, actually, to be fair, like the first squad that Bruce had in his first season, Gillington, nobody could have foreseen that he was going to flop in that way. So I think on paper, it was fine. I think once he got Callum Wilson, Ryan Fraser, Jamal Lewis, I think that at that point you could justifiably say like he's been given the tools of like, we are a Premier League team that's been in the league for what, 4 seasons now. Yeah, but the way that we operate as a club, the way that Steve Bruce talks about us as a manager, it's as if we've just been promoted. It's as if we haven't had £500 million in TV money. It's as if we haven't improved on the squad. This squad now that is winless in 6, and I don't know where the next win's coming from. This squad is the strongest it has been since promotion. I'm tired of the excuses that get made by the manager and the excuses that get made by pundits and press who, again, they act as if our squad is weaker than the newly promoted sides. It's not. In fact, it's not weaker than many of the mid-table sides. Yes, absolutely, we need striker cover. Can't dispute that. But I would also put it to anyone who says, "Oh yeah, well, we haven't got enough depth." Who has in the bottom half? Who has got it? I think if you took, like I say, you take Chris Wood and Dwight McNeil away from Burnley, they're going to struggle, right? But what depth do they have? Palace, you take away. Actually, to be fair, this video is quite good. But you take away Zaha, Palace will struggle, right? Our situation is not unique to us. We are no stronger or weaker than any other mid-table side, right? So the difference where you're going to get your results will come down to management, tactics, training, management of injuries, in-game management. I think that's been the biggest frustration, because sometimes, like the West Ham, the West Ham game, the first game of the season, I actually thought we were brilliant first half. I genuinely do. I think we were brilliant. And then David Moyes made changes to respond to how the game had gone, and we didn't. And we make substitutions so late in the game that the players don't have enough impact. They don't have enough time to put an impact on the game. There was a similar scenario when Pardew used to throw on Ben Arthur with 10 minutes to go and just expect him to be mercurial and pull a win out of nothing. That was similarly unfair. But in this scenario, yesterday with Watford, I was actually pleasantly surprised to see Dwight Gale on, but I think that Dwight Gale substitution could have been made 10 minutes sooner. Because we were. There was a chance before Gale came on where Gillington cut it across the 6-yard box. No one was there, and I think if Dwight Gale had been there, if Callum Wilson had been there, I think we'd have scored. If Dwight Gale had been there, we were more likely to score with a striker on the pitch, an actual striker on the pitch, than not having on one. And then I actually thought 4-3-3 worked really well. But the moment he brought Gale on for Almiron to play alongside, then we lost our shape. Midfield, then it was all of a sudden it was Longstaff and no, sorry, he took Longstaff off, didn't he? No, he did have it on. No, we lost our 3 in the middle. And then we were completely cut open. That Josh King disallowed goal, and again, this shouldn't get overlooked. Had that been allowed, we'd have lost, right? And I know it's easy to flip that round and say, if Murphy had scored, we'd have won. Yes, football's a game of fine margins, but the point is, the move that allowed that that Josh King goal to happen came from being exposed in midfield, and that's down to a Bruce substitution. But again, I don't want to dwell on Watford because
talk about what you want.
I don't want to dwell on Watford because, as I say, in the overall scheme of Steve Bruce results, I don't think it was the worst one, and I think like I've just pointed out to a very isolated incident with that substitution. But then I would also say I would have started Fabian Schär. I wouldn't be playing Kieran Clark. But again, this is a baffling selection that keeps happening. Pete has just said, what's my take on Shelvey? A very frustrating player. I think an uncomfortable truth is he is the best passer at the club. I think I don't particularly like him as a player because I think he's lazy. I think he's very much he's quite a loyal Bruce Lieutenant, but we don't have anyone else who can pass like him. And I think if we are going to play counter-attacking football and release Saint-Maximin, he's the one who spots passes that other people don't. And I do think we've missed him. So it's hard to say that. It's hard to say that because I do think he's a poor professional, but he's a good player. He has a very good passing range. Pretty slow, but I don't know what else we have that's different. I'd be playing Hayden, Shelvey, and Willock would be my 3 in a 4-3-3. But again, that's an opinion. People might disagree. I personally find it really hard to. I find it hard to admit that Shelvey is the best passer at the club, but he is.
Yeah.
Yeah, go on.
Shout out Shelvey, by the way. I'm not a Shelvey fan, to be fair, but when he's on it, he's on it. And when he's not on it, sort of thing, his Hollywood passes, he hits about 15, one or two comes good at every time. The rest of them is just poor.
Yeah, I think Shelvey, it's kind of frustrating though, because I remember his debut against West Ham, season we went down under McLaren. His debut against West Ham, I couldn't believe how good he was. Like, he got everything. That day, everything came off. He was involved in both goals. He was spraying 70-yard Hollywood passes all over the place. And everything happened. But I think he is a player that, like, when we're at home and in control and in possession, he's very good. But the minute that we go behind, or the minute that things aren't going his way, he puts his hands on his hips and he doesn't really run with the team. I don't think he works very hard, but I do think we miss him because, like, Longstaff had a good game yesterday. He had a good game, and scored a nice goal. He had a good game, but I don't think he's as good as Shelvey. And again, I think it's hard to admit that because Shelvey's not a very likable player. And Sean Longstaff is a Geordie, and we all like to see him do well. But I think Shelvey's better than him, and that's it. But again, that's an opinion.
Fair enough. Just going to read his comments. So I can read all the comments. I had so many of them flying through the roof, and I got one from Tom. He said Bruce isn't a Premier League manager; he's a Championship or League One manager, and he will take Aston like he did with other teams.
I don't know. I think, I agree he's a bad manager. Like, I absolutely agree. Yeah. But I don't think relegation is a certainty because of Steve Bruce. I think relegation is a possibility. It's a more likely possibility because of Steve Bruce. But I do think it's a bit remiss to say these players will go down when the large section of the squad have been there for 4 years and they haven't gone down 2 seasons previously. It's a long season. I'm not disputing that Bruce is a bad manager. I'm not disputing that I want him gone, but I don't buy into the notion that if he stays, we're necessarily down, because it is a long season and things can change. If we beat Wolves, for example, the table suddenly looks very different. It's so early. So yeah, he's a bad manager, but I don't think we have. Even if he's a Championship or League One manager, whatever that comment was, I don't think the squad is Championship or League One. I think the squad is good enough, and if Callum Wilson stays fit, then we'll be fine. But being fine is different to having fun and being a success. And again, what is success? Like, I think aiming to finish 11th this year, which is not unreasonable. We finished 12th last year. Let's try and finish 11th. I don't think that's not me asking for the world. That's I'm yet to meet all of these supposed Newcastle fans that demand Champions League football. I've never met one. I've never met, I've never met a Newcastle fan say we should be winning trophies, Champions League. Even when we were good, we didn't win anything. And did anyone care? No. They still packed out the stadium every week. We still had a lot of fun. We had a lot of players that got it, a lot. And actually, that's something that was nice. There's a handful of players there now who do get the ethos of the club. Saint-Maximin is one. I think his relationship with the fans is great. Joe Willock, another one. Callum Wilson. Our better players now do seem to get it, which is why it's a bit of a tragic irony that they get it and the manager doesn't.
Well said. Totally agree. Going through these comments very quickly. Right, we're going to talk about the next subject. Tom's just brought it up. We have the players to play 3 at the back or 5 at the back towards the end of the game. Bruce needs to go during the international window. And Matthew, I think what Rafa assured was this squad is very coachable. He had them playing at the best of their potential, whereas Bruce has gone.
I think Matthew's comment is spot on. Absolutely spot on. Because I would say Rafa worked with not as capable players on paper, but he got the best out of them. And that's why when we look at the 17-18 season where we finished 10th, first season back in the Premier League, Lascelles and Shelvey had legitimate cases to be included in the England team because they were playing to the best of their ability. A manager was getting them out. Hosselu, who was much maligned, he was much maligned and vilified and had lots of bad games. Again, he wasn't a very good player, but Rafa made him a functional player. And I think the same thing with Joelinton. I think he's a lad that needs a bit of TLC. I don't think he's been a bad signing, right? I don't think anyone would dispute that. It's a bad signing. The goal return has been poor. The amount of money that was spent on him, which I know is open for debate, he has been a bad signing. But I don't think he's useless. And I think that he's shown glimpses and touches of how he might benefit from playing wide in a 4-3-3 or in the hole in a 4-2-3-1. And I think it's the kind of tactical subtlety that Bruce doesn't have, that he can't get out there. So, it's not that long ago that Bruce said that he's not a lone striker and then continues to play him as a number 9. That is frustrating. I think if you gave Benitez this same squad, you'd see a lot more healthy rotation, you'd see a lot fewer injuries, and you'd see players being maximised to their potential. I've got a little bit of a left field idea in the fact that I think Cher could play in midfield. I think he could, but again, and that's just purely an experimental opinion of my own. But I'm saying those kind of thoughts about how players can change positions effectively are the kind of things that Rafa would offer us, as opposed to Bruce deciding on the formation first and then putting the players into the formation rather than deciding on a formation that suits these players. And I don't think 5 at the back suits this particular squad. It might have suited the team that Rafa had. And it also might have actually suited when we had Jetro Willems playing like as a wing back, right? It would have suited him perhaps, but I don't think it suits. I've just mentioned players that aren't there anymore. I've seen. And sorry, what was the comment before? So, sorry, Matthew. I absolutely agreed with his comment that these are coachable players. But I don't agree that the squad is doomed for relegation purely because of Bruce. I don't think he'll stay. Like I do think he's on borrowed time. It comes down to when he goes, not if he goes. I would like that to be. I never want the team to lose. But I also think if it's going to get him gone sooner, then fine. And it's a sad place to be in. But I think if we could sack him sack him in the international break and give the manager 2 weeks with the players, then that would be my best case scenario. That would be what it is. I mean, I found it more than a little insulting that when he was asked by the Chronicle about his holiday in the last international break before the Man U game, why did he prickle at that? Like, his response was, 5 or 6 of them were away on international duty. Well, that leaves 19 of them. So you had 2 weeks where you could have worked with 19 of them. And the ones that did go on international break, Fabian Schär didn't play against Man U, so that's one less already. I think, did Jeff Hendrick go away with Republic of Ireland? He didn't play. So what difference does it make? Your best players, i.e. Saint-Maximin, didn't go away with France. So you could have worked with your best players in that international break. You chose to go to Portugal. That for me, like, he just feels part-time, doesn't feel interested. So again, I don't know why I'm supposed to like this guy. I don't know what he's done. I don't know what he's done to keep me engaged, or indeed give me hope, or give me inspiration. I don't mind. Like, in the lead up to Man U, I don't mind him laying out the stark reality of the task we have. The return of Ronaldo and so on. I don't mind him pointing to that, as long as that was accompanied by, well, we've been working on something specific to deal with this threat. Even if that's not true, just say it. It gives fans the idea that, okay, yeah, we're probably going to lose to Man U. We don't expect to win at Old Trafford, but like let's at least give the pretense that our preparation has been bespoke, as opposed to, oh lads, just go for a jog and eat your vitamins. Like I don't see any sort of plan with Newcastle, and that is worrying. Whereas Rafa left nothing to chance; everything was planned. Even when we lost, you could see the tactics that he was trying to employ. You could see it might not have worked because there were limitations with players, but at least you knew what he was doing. You could see a strategy, a coherent game plan, and he was very honest and frank in his assessments of the team. I think Bruce, the comment that wound me up yesterday was, "I'm enjoying watching us play." Why? You're enjoying watching us not win? But again, I don't. But as I say, I'm trying not to. I'm trying not to hammer home the Watford point, because I actually think it was decent. And I don't want to be accused that I want us to lose just to further my own dislike of Bruce. That's absolutely not the case. I don't think any Newcastle fan wants that. I don't think any Newcastle fan, I don't want us to get hammered. But if we do get hammered and it gets him gone, then I can deal with it.
Totally agree. I want to talk about Tom's just made a brilliant question there, right? We talk about the two of ours where the cat case come up on Wednesday. I mean, Tom's asked, Rohan, do you think Newcastle has some money to spend in the next transfer window? And what are your thoughts? And we're going to talk about this on the cat case, which is going out on Wednesday. So, Tom, first question, will you have any money to spend? And also going to move on to the cat case on Wednesday. And what's your take on that? And which way will it go?
So do we have any money to spend? So in fairness, that is a question for Mike Ashley, not Steve Bruce, right? I think they will make loan signings. They'll have to, because if we're cut adrift, if we are struggling, the club have, in fairness to them, I'm not saying they should be praised for fixing a problem that they themselves created, but historically speaking, Newcastle have made loan signings in January. And I would expect the same thing here. So I would expect a centre-back and a striker on loan, or maybe very, very cheaply in January. Am I happy about that? Well, no. Obviously, as a Newcastle fan, you want the club to try harder. You want the club to do something. But for pure functionality, I think that's fine. I think I'm not happy about it, but that's just the way. That is just the way the club is run. So we might get lucky. And if you remember in the 17-18 season when Kennedy came on loan, he was, and also to be fair, Joe Willock last season. So a loan signing, obviously you want, I'd love it if we went and spent £20 million on a decent player. But if we're not, you could still get a decent loan in January. You might get a player that's desperate to play because he's not playing elsewhere. So yes, I do think we'll make some signings in January. Whether it's money to spend or whether it's loans, it's probably going to be loans. But yeah, I'd expect two players probably come in January. Hopefully that will be enough, but I can't read the future. As for the cat take, I mean, my take on the takeover in general is that it's just jading. It's absolutely exhausting. I don't think it's healthy for Newcastle fans to follow a running commentary of it, because there are so many people, so many self-interested people just peddling, peddling their own agendas and their own, all these in the know accounts. It's a waste of time. I'm interested in the cat test, in the cat case. Hope we win. Hope the takeover goes through, albeit with the caveats around the reprehensible politics of Saudi Arabia. But that's another topic. I still hope the takeover goes through, and that's a very, very complex, and it's a very complex topic that Newcastle fans have been unfairly oversimplified in their role in this. Do I think it'll win? I don't know. I do think, for what it's worth, and I don't know what that is anymore, I don't think Ashley is sticking around. I think for the first time in a long time, I would actually believe, yes, he is a willing seller, but he's an absentee owner. And I think the cautionary tale is that, yeah, Ashley wants out. We get it. We want you gone. He wants to go. But he's not going to get the price that he wants if the club is relegated. And in order to stop the club from being relegated, he has to take a more active role in owning it. And if it's true that Ashley actually has washed his hands of us, and it's Charnley that's making the decisions, then I would say Charnley is objectively the worst MD in the league. He is, I cannot name a decision that Charnley has got right. All of the managers that he's appointed have been disasters. Carver, horrific. McLaren, horrific. Bruce, horrific. Rafa wasn't hired by Charnley. Rafa came to us. So the only time we got a decent manager was when they offered to come and take the job. But I believe the rationale behind McLaren and Bruce was that they have Premier League experience. They have experience in the Premier League, yes, but not of winning games, of losing games. They have plenty of experience of that in abundance. The idea that Thomas Tuchel was passed up because they wanted to take McLaren on instead, like, that was laughable. And then McLaren was given a seat on the board, which no longer exists. The board now is Charnley and Justin Barnes. I don't see what Charnley sees in Bruce. I don't watch us and think to myself, okay, results haven't gone our way, but there's a process there. There's a good energy with the fans. There's a good relationship with players. The tactics are there, but the results just aren't following. I don't see a clear pattern of play. Everything is so short-termist at Newcastle. No decisions are made in relation to one another. Every decision is made knee-jerk, and we'll say bugger it. Let's just see what happens. It's such a devil-may-care attitude. It's so slap and dash, and that for me embodies Charnley's role as an MD. Steve Bruce is the symptom of Lee Charnley and Mike Ashley. But I think look, Ashley is the root cause of all of this. But it's very hard to say, Mike Ashley, you're absolutely in the wrong, because I think, right, we told him we want him out of the club. He sold the club, and then Premier League blocked it. We said we want players and we want proven Premier League quality. We got that. Like Callum Wilson, £20 million, Jamal Lewis, Ryan Fraser. It was a good window. Bruce's first transfer window was a very good window. And like, the players haven't been used to the effect that they could have done, in my opinion. And again, like, it could be right, it could be wrong, but in my opinion, the fact that this squad has not finished higher than it has done is because it hasn't had its potential realised by a better manager. And that's it. Does that mean that Bruce? Look, I have some sympathy for him in terms of, yes, absolutely, he should have got a centre back and a striker. Like, absolutely, I think he was shafted by Ashley and Charnley at the last minute, and they've treated him badly. But then my sympathy is curtailed by the fact that it was not 2 months ago that he in his own press conference was saying the club have gone above and beyond and broken all their rules to sign Joe Willock. Again, what other club has got a rule where signing one player breaks all your rules? Like, Steve Bruce has been Mike Ashley's biggest cheerleader for the best part of 2 years. So when he gets shafted by him, you've been a loyal lieutenant. Don't act surprised. And that's why the sympathy is there. And I go back to this point about the squad. I don't think the squad is bad. I think it could be better. I think absolutely it could be better. But I don't think this is a squad that necessarily gets relegated. If it gets relegated, it's because it hasn't been used properly. It's because it hasn't been managed. It's because games haven't been managed. I go back to the first game of the season. I thought we were very good in the first half against West Ham. David Moyes changed things. Steve Bruce didn't, and that cost us a result. He doesn't make substitutions proactively; they're all reactive. Everything's reactive, and that costs you games at this level.
Okay.
The best manager that I've seen for actually making substitutions in game and doing it is Tuchel at Chelsea. I thought, when Spurs played Chelsea at home, Spurs were the better side in the first half. Whatever Tuchel's done at half time, he's taken Kovacic off and put on Kante and changed the shape and then talked to them, and they came out and they absolutely blitzed them. Look, and again, I'm not expecting, I'm clarifying, I'm not expecting Steve Bruce to suddenly be as good as Tuchel, and I know Steve Bruce doesn't have an N'Golo Kante on the bench. It'd be wonderful if he did, but what I'm saying is that's an example of a manager noticing that something's wrong and changing it before it becomes a problem. Steve Bruce doesn't do that. There have been opportunities, and like I say, I go back to Dwight Gale didn't. We were chasing the game against Leeds, and we needed a goal, and we chose to finish the 90 minutes despite having come back into it, and then we're chasing a winner, and we had opportunities to win against Leeds as well, and he didn't bring on a striker. Why? He played for the draw. We had the momentum, and he played for the draw. That is frustrating. And again, I should be allowed to say that. I should be. Newcastle fans should be allowed to say that. And when someone says, "Well, but why do you want him gone?" All of the reasons above.
Rohan, what you said there, sort of thing, absolutely spot on. I just sat back and listened to you because you're talking sense, and I can't really add anything to that, But I mean, you said about Steve Bruce being reactive, and you're right. He only puts on 2 subs, just doesn't go for it at all whatsoever. For me personally, he needs to be quicker. He needs to react quicker, and that's his problem. That's why we're not winning games. I mean, you said there as well that we needed to chase the game. We needed a goal. Why not put Gale on? I just don't get it at all. And he's come out and say, "Oh, he's happy for a point. He's delighted for a point."
I saw in the aftermath of the Leeds game, there were 2 press conferences. The 2 interviews with the managers afterwards, and they were literally side by side. And it was Bruce delighted with a point, Bielsa not satisfied without winning. And it's a change in attitude. And look, at the end of the day, you're going to draw games, and you're going to lose games that you shouldn't, and you're going to draw games that you should have won. Like that. That's football, right? But how you respond to it and how you articulate your response to it is important, And that's the thing. I cannot imagine. I think if we'd have played Leeds off the park and gone 1-0 down, and then got like a last minute equaliser or something, then I think it would be acceptable to say something along the lines of we deserve more, but I'm glad that we fought back there. But in reality, I think Leeds at home and Watford away, our last 2 games where we've drawn, both fixtures eminently winnable. I'd be looking at that fixture list and saying, lads, we need 6 points from these 2 games, and we've taken 2. Does that mean that we won't get a fluke result against a big team later on in the season? Who knows? I mean, I think last season we drew home and away with Liverpool. You wouldn't on paper you wouldn't have expected that. So the fact that we drew home and away with Liverpool probably makes up for the fact that we didn't get a draw somewhere else or something like that. You can do that, but I think you can't rely on. I think it's a very naive approach to be like, oh, it'll all even itself out. I'm looking at that Christmas fixture list and I'm getting anxious, and I'm thinking, right, okay, Wolves away next game, got to take at least a point. Again, it's going to be tough, but that's the mentality you've got going. Got to take something from it. Spurs at home, yeah, they're the better side, absolutely, but they've not been brilliant lately. It's winnable. Don't go into it with the mindset of, because they're part of the Big Six or whatever, the game's already lost before a ball's been kicked. And I think we do that too often. I think that has become the culture of the club, that we, the club thinks we can't compete, so we won't compete, and that's frustrating. Yeah,
I totally agree, 100% there, sort of thing. But we need to do something very, very quickly. Otherwise, we are going to be in big trouble at this moment in time.
Well, I think new manager bounce would be massive. I honestly think, I think realistically, it would be Eddie Howe. Yeah, I'd absolutely take him. I don't think. Again, I'm not giving any kind of messiah complex to Howe. I'm not saying if Eddie Howe comes in, we're suddenly going to finish 7th. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that there would be an immediate upturn in form, because if nothing else, the mood amongst the fan base would be more positive. I think Eddie Howe would get his name sung very quickly. I think fans would get behind him. Fans haven't got behind Steve Bruce. They haven't. But as I've said already on this show, I don't really think he's given them any reason to. I don't feel like I owe him my support when he's done so little to try and endear himself to the fan base. It wasn't a few, only a few weeks into him being here, had he was already blaming previous managers' tactics for we didn't play it his way. We went over a year with him in charge before he said, "Oh, I'm going to play my way now," and nothing changed. Exactly. So, and these constant digs at the saying that we want to be as we were in the 90s and noughties. Obviously, we would like to be, but nobody's saying that that's the expectation. And I don't really appreciate comments like that from any pundits. I certainly don't appreciate comments like that from the manager, who, if nothing else, should be working to dispel those misnomers and those, those risible accusations against Newcastle fans. And again, I'll repeat, I have never met, in the whole time I've supported the club, I've never met a Newcastle supporter say we should be in the Champions League every year. Never. I don't know where that false narrative comes from at all.
No, definitely not. All we want is a team that can compete, Rohan. A team that competes and giving it a go, right? It's as simple as that. We're not demanding Champions League. We're not demanding to win a title. What we're demanding is to compete, to go out there and try. That's all we're asking for. It's just that simple.
I actually don't think. I mean, look, I think if we spent a load of money and bought players and then got that, again, not that we spent willy-nilly, but if we bought players that became available that were good fits for us and didn't quibble over 1 million, 2 million or whatever, we had a situation a few years back where Gylfi Sigurdsson was offered to us for 10 million quid, and we offered 8, and then he ended up going to Tottenham. And I think to myself, but in the context of Premier League football, what is 2 million quid? So we miss out on a good player because of that. Similar thing happened. Same summer, Micah Richards was offered to us for 5 million. We offered 3. Why? Why do we waste times? And yet, when it comes to selling players, we get angry with other clubs for lowballing us. It's insane. We are good sellers, but we're terrible buyers.
That's the thing. Yeah.
And it's frustrating. I mean, I actually wanted this summer. I don't think he's started brilliantly. He had a decent game for Watford yesterday. His goal got disallowed. But I actually wanted us to sign Josh King on a free. For me, that was just a transfer that made sense because Andy Carroll left, so you needed a backup striker. Josh King, free transfer. Already knows several of the players because he played at Bournemouth as well, has had a historically good relationship with Callum Wilson, good strike partnership. Josh King on a free made sense. Why did it not happen? That kind of lack of activity, and that's a criticism of Charnley, Ashley, Barnes. I know Bruce hasn't got control over that, but then he is complicit in a way because he'll come out in the press and say, no, well, we've actually got enough options in attack. And then he listed Sam Maximan, Almiron, Gale, and Wilson. Well, 2 of those players, 50%. Oh, so Joelinton, sorry. So 3 of those 5 players you've just mentioned are not strikers. So, that's frustrating. Going back to this thing about do we go down, do we not? I think it really depends. It depends on keeping people fit. It depends on what changes, if anything, in the dugout. If Steve Bruce is to stay, which unfortunately is also a possibility. If he stays, I don't think that is necessarily a relegation sentencing. I think it becomes more likely. I don't think it is necessarily, because I think players like Wilson, players like Sam Maximan, players like Willock, they will ultimately come good and it will be fine. But as I say, what constitutes fine? Is 17th fine? Is 12th fine? Whatever. As far as the club are concerned, 17th is fine. As far as the fans are concerned, that's not good enough. And the players are better than 17th. That much I will say. I'm not going to big us up to a point of delusion because I'm not deluded. I think I'm quite grounded. But I would say this squad is better than 17th. Yeah. That's it. It's better than 17th. And this squad deserves a better manager than Steve Bruce.
Well said. Well said. I was going to ask you as well, do you think David Moyes or Ralph Hasenhüttl will get this current team into Europe? Europa League?
No, I don't think you're getting. No. I don't think. I think with some way. I think there's a glass ceiling. I think that we could finish with a better manager. If he was given a full season and a couple of players actually allowed to make his signing. So say get rid of Jeff Hendrick, replace him, whatever. You're looking at a kind of 9th to 12th bracket. But we could have some fun. I think one of the most frustrating things about watching football through a Newcastle lens the last few years is we have relied heavily on 3 teams being worse than us. I don't want to do that anymore. I want us to dictate our own fate. As it happens, I don't think Hasenhüttl is. I would have him over Steve Bruce, but I don't think he is the miracle worker that he's been made out to be. I think he gets a lot of hype. David Moyes, I think, would have done brilliantly with us. I think I look at what Moyes has done at West Ham and that discipline, that organisation. I think Moyes would have been a very, very good fit for us. And given the choices that were available to us the summer that Bruce was appointed, I would have taken Moyes. I wouldn't have hesitated. I don't think it would have been pretty football, but I don't think we'd have been discussing relegation. I think we'd have been very solid. And again, this is probably this is again an uncomfortable truth. The same thing with, I said I don't like John Joe Shelby, but John Joe Shelby is the best passer at the football club. I would have also said that if Allardyce had taken the job, then relegation wouldn't have been an issue either. I know he would have been absolutely would have been an unpopular choice, and he would have alienated fans and stuff. But if you look at what Allardyce did at Everton, he was unpopular and rightly so, and that's fine. But I just don't think there would have been as much of a risk. I would have actually preferred. I said the other day, again, I'm not a Pardew apologist by any stretch, but I do think that history reflects kindly on Alan Pardew. And if you look at some of the shit that Pardew had to take from the media, from the fans and so on, for doing what was ultimately a far more respectable job than Bruce has done, it's insane. So this idea that Bruce has been given a hard time of it, he hasn't had even a modicum of the pressure that Pardew had, and Pardew delivered better league finishes than him. But again, but it pains me that the bar is so low that I'm saying that. Steve Bruce has made me yearn for Pardew, and I never thought I would say that. Obviously McLaren was terrible, but McLaren, the saving grace of McLaren was that he was only there for 28 games. Bruce is approaching 100. He's 96 games in charge now. So again, I also resent the implication that this is somehow, we only want him out when we're on losing runs, and when he's winning, it's fine. No, it's not. It's just he has a win rate of 28.5%. Nobody in the league. The only person with a worse win rate, I would imagine, if you just took Premier League games, is Daniel Farke, because Norwich went down before. But if you bring in Farke's win rate from the Championship, then obviously it goes up. So excluding Farke, of the managers that have been there for a full season or longer, nobody has a worse record. And that is a raw fact. So that is in black and white. He's done a bad job, and yet bafflingly, we're told every day I see something from a pundit or a rival fan telling us that we should be grateful, and we're going around in circles. But basically, that has been the case the whole time he's been here. I hate the phrase, what do you expect? It's not about expectation. It's about, I would like my team to win more often than it loses. And if it can't do that, because only a few teams can, if it can't do that, I'd like it to try and get to as close to that as possible. And if we lose a game, I want to be able to say, I feel bad. I'm annoyed. This result was unacceptable. I don't want to be told, yeah, but you expect to lose, so it's fine. And I don't know any other fan base that gets told to be glad about losing as often or as loudly as we do. And that's been the case, for so long.
Yeah, I totally agree. I would have won every game. I would have got there, try and win the game, every single game as possible. If we lose but play well, I take it. But if we get beat and you don't put on a performance, then what happens is, then people's going to be negative and people aren't going to be happy at all. Like yesterday, we gave a right goal yesterday. We should have won the game. We should have been out of sight. I mean, you look at the chances we had. Longstaff fouled over, Clark headed it wide.
Yeah.
We found guilty of that chance he had. And the goal we conceded came on an unnecessary corner from Malmiron, gave away an unnecessary corner, and he scored from that 10 seconds after that. But we gave it a goal yesterday. Now, if we just keep playing like that, give it a right goal, play 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1, right? we got more chance of winning games in that system. We'll play 5-4-1.
I think that's the thing though, John, is that it's going to be there are going to be 3 scenarios. There'll be scenario 1 that Bruce stays for the whole season. He stays for the whole season. Then he's the onus. The onus is on him then to stick with the formation change and adapt as a tactician and improve as a manager in the same way that players will have to step up and we'll have to do as best we can. That's scenario 1. Scenario 2 is he reverts to type. We keep losing games and he's sacked and replaced, and then we have a whole new prospect to deal with. And scenario 3 is that we change the formation. Well, we change the formation and we do what we can with the current squad, but then we're completely ravaged by injuries. In which case, it would become very difficult to see how we would come out of it. But like, I don't want to be like needlessly pessimistic. Like, I can't. It's a shame that Callum Wilson's injured, right? It is a shame that he's injured, but every team has injuries. What we need to work out is why are our injuries happening so often. And that comes down to like something has to change with training. I mean, we all know the facilities are shit because they haven't been upgraded in whatever 15, 16 years. So, I think the club needs to take a lot of responsibility for that. I'm not going to blame Steve Bruce for the club facilities being bad. That was the case under Rafa as well. Like, that's Mike Ashley, very much so. But the only thing we can do in the immediate term is change how we approach games tactically and change how we prepare for them in terms of what are they working on training. I don't want them to be training twice a week and having 2 days off. I want them to be working hard and trying to win games. And I want there to be bespoke plans depending on the opponent, not just, that worked well last week, so we'll do the same thing again next week. Every game is different. Tom's just said that he'd have Lampard in charge. Like, yeah, I'm open-minded. I'd have Lampard.
Yeah, I totally agree there. I mean, I think Lampard would do well for Newcastle if he's back's right, sort of thing. But when he comes to Newcastle, that's another thing. But he might fancy a challenge in Newcastle. You just never know. But
I'd prefer Eddie Howe to Lampard, but I wouldn't complain about either. I'd be absolutely fine with either manager, to be honest. I think they need fresh ideas. They need fresh ideas and they need fresh motivation. They need inspiration. We're told that he's a good man manager, but I worry about Matty Longstaff is proof that isn't the case. Freddie Woodman is proof that isn't the case. Jamal Lewis is proof that isn't the case. He had a row with Matt Ritchie, which ostensibly has been resolved in that Ritchie's starting every week, but we agreed earlier on in this show that Ritchie isn't a left back. So how has Matt Ritchie gone from being rowing with the manager to first choice left back in the space of 4 or 5 months? How has that happened? Like,
it's crazy, man. I mean, if it had been a top class manager, like say Reece James had a go at Tuchel, like Richie done to Bruce, Reece James would not be in the team. He'd be dropped. Yet Steve Bruce is scared of having to go at the top bigger names at Newcastle United. That's why he picks players like Richie, Shelby, Lascelles.
Yeah, I think they're a lot very. There are a lot of. No. I think that's hard. That is speculation because it is hard to know what goes on the training ground without actually being there. But I would say that there are certain players that get picked because they are willing to fall into line. I actually would say, I mean, look, Sam Maximan is so good that you can't drop him, right? That's the case. But I got a little bit confused about, when he came out and said that like he was backing the manager, blah, 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 all that stuff. I wasn't really going to expect any player to come out and say they're not backing the manager. But I think that like Sam Maximan is a consummate professional, but I do feel like there needs to be. I'm not advocating like a mutiny or anything like that. I'm saying that like certain senior players, better players who are going to be in the team every week need to have a very frank and honest discussion with management and say, look, we think this would serve us better. I do think players need to like take a bit of ownership of it. I know that they can't physically force him to change this or change that, but I just think that's a conversation that needs to happen a bit more. It just needs to be a bit more constructive. I think that's the case. Like, I don't think Saint-Maximin benefits from being a striker. Basically, I think he's a winger. And I think that he should feel comfortable having that conversation with Steve Bruce. And if he's such a good man manager as we're told, then surely that conversation could be a good conversation. And if he is going to stay, then I want there to be a lot more depth and research to training rather than okay, this worked 1 week, we'll do the same again.
Yeah, I totally agree there. We're going to wrap up very in a minute, and I've got one from Ian and Newcastle's fan. Mike Ashley sees Bruce as a problem to be sorted by incoming new owners. He wants them to be forking out any conversations. He's basically saying that he wants new owners to fork out conversations. So if that is the case, he will not sack Bruce because 4 million reasons why he won't sack him. That's from me.
Yeah, I mean that could well be true. That could be true, and yeah, Ian is probably correct that Mike Ashley is absolutely reluctant to pay out a compensation package. But to go back to revisit a point that we've already made on this show is that how long do you leave it before he starts to I mean, you could argue, I mean, it's only 6 games in, it's a very tight table. You could argue he's already jeopardising Premier League status as it is. You could argue that. But say we go into the October international break winless and in the relegation zone, I don't really see the case for keeping him. Again, Alex Hurst made a very good point about the club's record at the moment of 7 wins in 36 games. That included the golden period of 5 wins in our last 9 last season. But that run stretches as far back as November 2020, right? In that time, only 7 wins have been yielded. I don't really see how Charnley or Ashley, even the dumbest people in Newcastle, could not see that that is the maths of that. If we were continuing to win at a rate of 7 in 36, and what we've played 6 games already and we're winless.
Yeah, 6 games.
So we're saying we're going to win 7 wins. 7 wins this season. That's 21 points. 21 points, and then we've got 2 draws at the moment, 3 draws. So we'd finish the season on 24 points. There is no way that stays up. So I would like to think. As reluctant as Ashley might be to sack him, he might have to. But there is also another scenario, as I say, where things do change. At the moment, I feel like I don't have any faith that they will, and I think changing manager is the only thing you can do to ensure that they do. But I'm not making the decision.
It's ridiculous. It's madness. I mean, getting relegated, that sort of record will be absolutely awful. It'll be very close. Making a Derby and Sunderland record, by the way, as well. But it is sad. It is sad to keep losing.
I don't know. I genuinely don't think. I don't think relegation is a certainty. I don't think it is. I think it is a distinct possibility, and it angers me that is the case. And I think the club need to be proactive and stop that from being a distinct possibility and reduce it to being a slim possibility. And they need to change managers, and it's the only thing that you can't. The transfer window is closed, right? So you cannot change personnel. You can't change players. You can change the manager. I know. There's a lot of infighting on Twitter at the moment. Like I see people saying stuff like, Steve Bruce has become a lightning rod for Mike Ashley, and Mike Ashley is still the root cause of the problem. And yeah, that is absolutely true. And I don't think any Newcastle fan has forgotten that. I think everyone knows Mike Ashley is the reason we have Steve Bruce as a manager in the first place. But Mike Ashley, Mike Ashley doesn't go to the stadium. Mike Ashley doesn't pick the team. Mike Ashley doesn't take training. So you can't change Mike Ashley. We've been trying to get rid of him for over a decade. We've proven you can't do that, but you can change managers. That's the only thing you can do in the short term, and I think it would be a massive improvement to do so. I've said it in many different ways today, and I hope we do get a change in manager, because I will think it will be a massive lift to match going fans, massive lift to social media, and and a massive lift to players as well, who would appreciate having somebody with fresh ideas. I also hasten to add, somebody said, oh, Steve Bruce gets a raw end of the deal because he's old, and people just think that a younger manager would be better. I don't think it's anything to do with age. You know, I would take how old Steve Bruce, like 60 odd, who's out of work. Like if you said there was a 60-year-old manager with like a good pedigree and a good CV, I'd happily have another 60-year-old there. You know, I want different ideas. That's the thing. I want different ideas, and I want more proactive and passionate press conferences, and more. I want more in-game management. I don't want it to just be, I've picked the team, let's just see how we do. You know, I mean, there was an incident last year. I think it was against Brentford in the League Cup, where we had 4 strikers on the pitch. We had Dwight Gale, Callum Wilson, Joelinton, if you're going to call him a striker, and Andy Carroll. What formation was that? You know, what formation was that? You know, there's no rhyme nor reason to it. It's just throw the kitchen sink. That's happened too often. I would also say I made a comment last year that I wanted Thomas Frank to be our manager, and it was shot down. It was shot down by he's managing in the division below, blah blah blah. Like, just because he's young and foreign. I mean, young, he's in his 40s, whatever. But you know, I don't know what counts as young in football management terms. But Thomas Frank tactically outsmarted Steve Bruce in League Cup quarter-final. You know, and also this idea that we've had good cup runs. I know you can say you can only beat what's in front of you. We got taken to a replay by Rochdale. We got taken to a replay by Oxford. They weren't exactly swashbuckling FA Cup runs, were they? You know, and then we got knocked out. There's no shame in getting knocked out of the FA Cup by Man City. Like that quarter-final, fine, like no problem. But then the Brentford game, the Brentford game was unforgivable. Like that was a chance to reach our first semi-final since 2004, and it was just thrown. It was thrown because of no real tactics, no real game plan, and then by the end of it, we had 4 strikers and no midfield. You know, and I look at results like that, and I go back to the original stat of 23 wins in 82 league games. You give that record to any other club, obviously. Well, any other club, it wouldn't be allowed to get that bad at bigger clubs than us. But any similar size or similar standard club, 23 wins in 82 at Southampton, Hasenhüttl would have been sacked. You know, he'd have gone. And this exceptionalism is frustrating. Malcolm's just pointed out Rafa is older than Bruce. Like, yeah, so there you go. So what has it got to do with age? You know, I wouldn't have minded if, I mean, when Bobby Robson was manager, no one was saying he was too old to do the job. Came in at
66, 67, and he got us 2 Champions League.
So, who knows? Like, look, I don't think him staying is a death knell, but I would prefer if he didn't. And I do think that a change up in the dugout would be a massive lift. And again, I wouldn't expect the earth, but I would expect for us to at least try and finish higher than we did last season, which is, if we finished 11th this year, we'd be ecstatic, I think.
Yeah. I totally agree.
And that's funny, like, we'd be ecstatic with 11th, but that's funny, isn't it? Because apparently we're a fan base that only expects Champions League football, but we'd all be thrilled with 11th.
Yeah, I'll be thrilled with 11th. Bring stands to this moment in time and then give it a boost. Just got one more comment for the wrap up quickly. You wouldn't get this kind of incompetence in any other business, like Sports Direct, for example.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, there was an article in the 1997 Journal of Market Research. It's called the West Ham Syndrome, and it's about market loyalty in football, where they say if you go to a pub and they started serving rubbish food and the prices went up and it became unclean and a bad thing, you just stopped going. You just wouldn't go anymore. Whereas with football, you don't really have that choice. So I know a lot of Newcastle fans have voted with their feet, and I know that attendances are lower, and power to those people who have decided to boycott, but also power to those people who can't give it up because they feel so torn and conflicted. I think the hardest part of all of this is that it's all very well saying that you're past caring and feigning apathy, but that's not true. If we didn't care, we wouldn't be having these long conversations, would we? Like, we're never going to stop caring, and that's the hard part. So, I would love to be able to switch off and drown out Steve Bruce's press conferences. You know.
Yeah, I agree.
But,
you see that comment, John? You wouldn't get a word in.
No, it's just nice. It's nice to be able to. It's nice to be able to vent Newcastle and not being told that we're wrong to do so.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, listen, it's been absolutely fantastic getting a journalist on there like yourself, and going to wrap up there. Been over an hour and 20 minutes, and yeah. So before I let you go, I mean, can you see Newcastle staying up? Well, Steve Bruce staying at Newcastle, and just those really.
I think we can stay up. I think we can stay up, and I think we will stay up if we make a change in manager. Like that's the main thing. I think we can stay up with Steve Bruce, but I don't think it'll be. I think it'll be comfortable, and I don't think it'll be fun. I think it'll be to the wire. It'll be relying on other teams losing. It'll be praying that Wilson and Sam Maximan stay fit. It won't be an enjoyable season. And isn't football meant to be fun?
Yeah. So it's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be entertainment sport, but Steve Bruce ain't making us entertaining, isn't he? So, yeah, let's hope that we keep those two fit between now and the end of the season, and also the next part as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, thanks very much for having me on, John. And yeah, hopefully we have a more positive result to celebrate in the coming weeks.
Fantastic. Before I let you go, I'll ask you one more question. Did you enjoy coming on my show?
Yeah, no, loved it. Loved it, John. Yeah, I hope you get 1,000 subscribers as soon as possible.
Fantastic. Just one more comment here, by the way, from Judy. Judy's in the house, by the way. I have a motto that stuck to me season after season. Newcastle's survival plan is to hope 3 teams do worse than us. So he spoke about that. Not that we do better than 3 teams. And also, hi, Rohan. Thanks for coming over. And that's from Judy. And she is an absolute...
Yeah, she's not wrong. She's not wrong. Absolutely.
She's not, isn't she? But listen, like I said, you must come back again, and definitely going to get you back on the game at some stage. And if you do like the video, please like, subscribe, and comment. And where do you find you, Rohan? Where do you find? Do you have a podcast at all? Or obviously,
no, I mean, so I'm just joined the Daily Telegraph on the Arts and Culture desk now, but so I'll be posting some articles on Twitter. You can follow me on Banjeree 23. Yeah, just on Twitter, and obviously you can read my previous stuff. Used to do sport for the Mail, the Mirror, New Statesman. I've written about Ashley before, none of it complimentary. Yeah, that's fantastic sort of thing. Like, we do look at your tweets as well, but like, you do talk sense, and we'd rather have you than the other people as well. Got Chin from Singapore. Thanks, John and Rohan. Great show, and also in here, and have a good day, Judy. But I do apologize. I can't read all your comments, because I had so many comments flying through the roof at the moment, so I do apologise. I normally read each and every one of them. But Rohan, thank you very much for coming on, and no worries.
Enjoy the day, and thank